Z and Gen Alpha, they're perpetually plugged in, right? Like this is kind of just etic for their generation. They have a characteristic of learning through digital means, right? So they're digital natives, and they're in the dawning of what's expected to be the IoT era, which is the Internet of Things. Now, they're pragmatically driven, and according to the 2019 news article, the average teenager spends about 7 hours daily on screen time alone. That's not just ingesting media, but it's just screen time. And it jumps up to about 9 hours whenever you look at the actual education being added on top of like the leisure component and the entertainment components. So that means that this generation is also kind of prone to distraction and some multitasking behaviors. They have a short attention span, right? They have a connected lifestyle, and which means that the culture and the content that you experience in the classroom has to have some kind of effect outside of the classroom in their everyday lives. Now, one of the problems I thought was very interesting was that we are preparing Generation Alpha while looking for Generation Z needs while using Generation X resources and baby boomer content, right? So the idea is that this is a very pragmatic approach, saying that like every generation needs something different, which would be kind of rejected under realist or idealist sort of philosophical models. But if we were going to engage in that, okay, what is their innate skill sets and their strengths? Well, they adapt very quickly to remote learning, right? They have a high use for technology. That iPhone or tablet that's in their hand is basically an extension of their self. So they also carry with them some idealisms, some desires for social change, for content creation. They're highly connected to social media, and they email and text friends fairly regularly throughout the day, if not all the time. One of the things that they had as a response to like life's problems was just Google it, find the answers to routinary problems, and that's fine for the what, the questions of what am I doing, or what does this mean, or what is this rash from, or what does this plant. But it isn't as good when it comes to deeper questions where we're looking for how do I do something, or why should I do something, right? Those are more deeper layer questions that you're not going to find quickly on YouTube or on Google. You have to kind of wrestle with them yourself, right? The other beautiful thing about that particular generation is that they have an entrepreneurial drive, right? They want to create, they want to have that content, they want to be able to make a difference, right? So let's talk about some of the deficiencies, and they're not short. They're very prone to multitasking, which means that they're inefficient use of their time. They have shorter attention spans. They're highly distracted. They're highly connected to social media, which means that they have a reduced ability to discuss and engage in a person-to-person conflict or person-to-person communication. They also have reduced ability sometimes for emotional intelligence. They won't have the same social skills as what you see in Generation X or even millennials. They're going to seek online interactions over human interactions, and they don't necessarily have a strong identity independent of their group, right? If you use social media, you're going to find that it quickly puts you into a resonating chamber based upon its algorithms, and this is who you are, this is what you like to hear, this is what you don't like to hear, and it just kind of feeds you that, right? Now, one of the things that were troubling, and we didn't actually cover anywhere in class, is actually data according to the CDC, and as reported by Business Insider and a couple other websites. Children aged 10 to 14, the suicide rate has tripled from 2007 to 2017. For teens between 15 and 19, the rate increased by 76% in that same time period. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for people 10 to 24 in 2017. So it's a huge deal, and it's going up. And there are even some links and some research that's going on that tries to relate, at least get correlation, if not causation, between social media use and suicide or suicide risk. So this comes at a cost, being so connected to the world, right? Now, what is the preconceptions? Well, life with a screen, the screen is just an extension of themselves, right? It blurs the lines between reality and artificial reality. That cell phone, that internet access really builds into like the instant culture. I want the answer and I wanted it now. And so the desire to dig deeply or to like push hard into an issue, that at first seems impervious, or at least seems complicated, may not be something that a Gen Z will want to do by themselves, right? They're very interested in solutions for either the environment or social change, but when it comes to education, they believe in a very similar pragmatic model. Education needs to be about me. It needs to be about my needs. It needs to be about my feedback. It's very tuned and very accustomed to what, like, the John Dewey approach, trying to meet the child where they are. Part 2. So the interview with the field educator, Sarah Pando. Sarah Pando teaches English as a second language to kindergartens through elementary school levels in Amsterdam, New York. She teaches in a school that has a high poverty rate and a high percentage of people in color. So I discussed with her the following field questions. Question 1, considering the general characteristics of Generation Z or Generation Alpha, what concerns you? Some concerns directly came to mind in regards to skill strengths and gaps that they potentially bring to a classroom. One, in the fact that they are more accustomed to talking to each other and in general over a computer or cell phone, or oftentimes they lack the ability to bring issues and concerns to an in-person conversation. These generations were brought up on cell phones, computers, and things being instant, not waiting for and working harder for results. She sees this in a classroom with the lack of motivation to learn new skills, and accepting failure, because, let's be honest, everyone is going to fail at some point or another. In other ways, these generations are much more tech-savvy, and they're able to learn tasks quicker in regards to technology and new ways of education. I think that especially now in the education realm, these generations are having an easier time adapting to remote learning and being more on a computer than face-to-face. Again, all students are different, so although they are able to access technology easier and quicker, this may not be their preferred way of learning, and this may be where the struggle is. Question 2. Do you think that there are any preconceptions associated with this next generation? Yes, the next generation, I do think the preconception of these students is that they're lazy or unmotivated, but I believe that as a teacher you have to find something that will motivate each student, which can be very challenging these days. This also depends on how they are brought up at home, and if they have tried to learn behavior, they have learned behaviors of how to act when something doesn't go their way. I try to teach my students to be resilient, because life is not easy, and it's not going to get any easier. Question number 3. What is your vision for your students? I want my students to become strong-minded, independent, and adaptable thinkers in an age where they might not know how to do this. All generations bring different skill sets to society. This trend is never going to end, and as the world changes, so will the generations that are born into it. One thing I would focus on with these generations is practicing and being able to have real conversations in person. It can be easy to text someone or email them, but having the courage to directly ask someone in person, having a real conversation about something that's bothering you, etc., well, that's impressive. Many people in society, even in my generation, have a hard time approaching people in person to have direct conversations. The issue with having conversations on text, email, and the lines of communication can be easily lost. And in a world where things are already complicated enough, you want to have strong, easy, communicable relationships with your family, your friends, your coworkers, not make it more difficult. In regards to getting my students ready for the world, regardless of what professional or career path they go in, being able to communicate well is an asset to have in any career, because it's often hard to come by in newer generations. A company, a school district, even a job at a convenience store is going to want to make sure that you have clear and concise conversations with whoever you come in contact with. Part number 3. So my teaching goals, right? So the 3 teaching goals that I would take is 1, I would want to teach virtues and introspection through the use of small groups, to be able to work on innovative solutions towards either a local or neighborhood problem, and pitch this prototype together to get funding or to get other community buy-in, right? What this does is this actually leverages the so what principle that John Dewey is a proponent for, which is pragmatism, which kind of engages well with that student in that particular generation. It leverages I would leverage using a project management system called Scrum, which is used in software design and software development already for a couple of decades now, so it's fairly well hashed out. Wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel for that. And you would creates the opportunity for some teams to self-organize, to find groups for collaboration towards a common issue, and then you can kind of see how they're going to be able to work through their communications. Are they going to hardline for their particular beliefs and their wants, or are they going to be able to compromise for the good of the team? And being able to draw at the end of that turn some introspective understanding of themselves, and through their material and through their creative processes, allows them to better understand, how do I learn, how do I work better, and what are my barriers, right? So it kind of takes it home at a different level than just being preached at. The other part number 2, would be to develop resiliency. So that'd be my second goal, is developing resiliency. It said in some of the teaching material that we learned this week, it's that up to 72% of Generation Z wants to start their own business. So being able to develop the ability to bounce back from setbacks is incredibly important life skill. So I would suggest, and I'd probably use part of my teaching material, the why and the understanding of the why, the how, and the what by Simon Sinek, starting with why. I'd want to use James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, and also develop some person-to-person communication. And I would always want to push to distinguish facts from fakes, right? The idea of something being authentic and something being real, and something being true to its nature, rather than being something that's superficial or being manipulated. Because I think that that's something that young people specifically have a desire to navigate in their own world, right? And that's something that would help them establish, is this thing credible? Is this something that I want to put my trust in? Is this something that I have to respect, or is this just an idea that somebody's proposing that doesn't have any grounding? So that would be very important. The third one is actually to create opportunities for them to create content to reflect on whatever they learned, right? And this means visually oriented, visually marketing, some creative content that's probably less than 6 minutes long, just to keep it within their attention spans, and be able to give them an outlet for that creative content, right? Either YouTube or some other kind of performance in which people can kind of see it, and they can take pride in their work, right? So creative marketing, it's about understanding the boundaries of their competencies and like where can they push, where can they offer their solutions, right? That's the boundaries for entry, as it was stated previously, are reduced with technology, which means that having an understanding of what I can do and how I can find those answers is more important than actually having those answers by themselves, right? So I'm going to put up the references that I used. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you enjoyed this podcast.